Today in the show, I have my friend Jason joining me, who recently attended the 21 Royal dining experience at Disneyland Park. Yes, that dining experience in the former Disneyland Dream Suite above Pirates of the Caribbean, where it costs a group of up to 12 people $18,000 to dine. We get into a bit of the history about the space, the experience from top to bottom, and Jason answers a lot of questions for me about what exactly it is that you get for 18 grand. If you're someone who will never even contemplate visiting 21 Royal, I hope you can live vicariously through Jason listening to this episode. If you're someone who's even slightly considered dishing up the money for the experience, this episode should shed light on it all, and perhaps even encourage you to take the leap. Regardless, I hope you enjoy my conversation with Jason all about 21 Royal.
It's time to dive into today's Disney dialogue.
Hello, Jason, and welcome to Disney Coast to Coast. How you doing today?
I'm well. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm excited to talk to you because we're talking today about one of those things that Disney fans, they look at, right? They look at from the outside. They peek inside as much as they can, and they say, oh gosh, maybe one day I will drop a crap ton of money and do that thing. And that thing today is the 21 Royal dining experience inside Disneyland Park, and you did it.
Yeah, it was about a year and a half in the making, planning, booking, and then going. It is a magical experience that left me wanting more.
When you say a year and a half planning, are you saying figuring out who's going to go and where the money's going to come from? Or are you saying the wait list when you call is about a year or a year and a half out?
Yeah, it's a little bit of both. So they have not, like, for instance, right now opened up 2025 bookings.
Okay.
They'll probably do that over the course of the next month and a half or two. And when they do it, they usually will open up the whole year. And so you really kind of have to think about when you want to go in a year so that you can put in for it. And then also once you book it, that day is gone. There's not really a hold it till you make your decision. So in that sense, then you kind of also have to know who's going to go with you, or if you're going to go just you and a friend, that's okay too. But you just have to cover the cost of that.
And the cost, of course, it's more than the last time I heard. When they first announced this for the general public, it was $15,000 for up to 12 guests. It is now $18,000 for up to 12 guests. And this is a 4 or 5 hour experience. And that's $18,000 total. So you divvy that up among 12 or 2, or hey, make it a solo trip. I want to know somebody who makes it a solo trip and just hear how that experience is.
I mean, you could.
You could. You absolutely could. Somebody really wealthy who is just, has done everything. And they're like, you know what? I'm just going to do this. But yeah, this is, if you don't know, 21 Royal, it's a luxurious dining experience with personalized service inside this amazing location that's been used for numerous things throughout the years, which we will get into. It's above Pirates of the Caribbean. You can certainly see the sign by the stairway. If you go to Disneyland, you may have just walked by it and never seen it. It says 21 Royal right on it. One of the big questions I have to start out, does this $18,000 include park admission? Because I know for VIP tours, you still got to buy those park tickets to get through the gate to attend that expensive tour. So does $18,000 cover park admission to Disneyland?
Yeah, it does. And so for all 12 people, it'll be not only your admission to the parks for the day, which will include park hopper, But then also it'll allow you to park at the hotel in VIP. Or concierge parking, so to speak, so that is covered for you. And then the other thing that I think is probably the topic of discussion is that, it is one of the few places that you can actually be served alcohol. And the entire night has a combination of pairings, wines, and alcoholic drinks. Those are also all included in the cost as well. So it is sort of, I call it a little all inclusive, but it's designed so that you can focus the entire night on sort of feeling as if many years ago, Walt and Lily would have been hosting you in their private home.
All right. Well, it's nice that it includes those things. You're certainly paying enough. It should include those things. They would make a lot of money from me because I don't drink alcohol. So they would just be like, all right, here's a cheap customer still paying a lot of money. But do you get lightning lanes or any front of line privileges for attractions?
No, I mean, you do not. I know. No.
How dare they?
No, because you're essentially starting right around dinner time. So whilst you might be in the park and riding rides all day with your regular admission, you're really going directly from the hotel through what I'll call off stage and into the back areas of the park, and then coming on set or on stage and going directly in to the courtyard where you begin your evening. And by the time you end, there is you're pretty much looking at either Fantasmic at that point or close to then at that point park close.
All right. Very cool. So just a bit of an overview of this. This is a lavish private Disneyland residence that was actually conceptualized by Walt Disney himself, right? We all know about Walt's apartment above the firehouse on Main Street, USA, or Town Square. And I actually did a deep dive into that on episode 1002 of Disney Coast to Coast when we did the whole Walt Main Street story. But do you want to touch a little bit on Walt's apartment?
It's interesting. I have found, obviously, like so many people, I grew up loving the parks, and over time you're always thinking, like, what can I do different? How many things can I do that are new and unique? And for me, probably about 2 years ago was the first time I actually did the apartment tour, and it was one of those moments where I had done that as well as the Burbank Studio Lot tour, where you can stand inside of Walt's working office of what we refer to as 3H. And each of those times I kept sort of almost standing there and pausing and going, the history that happened in this room, the decisions that were made, the dreams that we now all get to see in these parks. And it's weird because, like, I asked the question, I'm like, what in the apartment is still original? I think everybody does. And to sort of see those items, to hear about those items was just fascinating to me. And really at the end of it, I just walked away kind of going, I wish I could, like, we've all seen the iconic photos of Walt and Lily sitting in the chairs or on the couches inside that apartment. And they look like they're just like dreaming up things that, I don't know, they're probably deciding what they wanted for dinner. But for me, it was like, I wonder what that would have been like if I was there. That's really where then, when we were walking by 21 Royal at the time, we were out there with some family, and my sister-in-law says, we should go there one day. And I was like, yeah, we should. And so that's when I really started researching it, figuring out how to do it. And the timing just worked out well because we actually ended up being able to surprise her for her birthday out there. And so that was sort of the precipice of us kind of going and enjoying the night.
Jason, I would just like to add, my birthday is April 5th, and I love surprises. So
a little pixie dust coming your way, sir.
Just wanted to throw that out there to you.
I like that it's still a year out now.
Plenty of time to plan. Well,
it's interesting. I'll give you a little piece of information if it's any consolation.
Sure.
We did all 12 people, some family, some friends. And what's interesting is that in some of the things that we'll talk about in the experience and some of the history of it, you think, okay, this is a once in a lifetime thing. totally get that. And it was funny. I was joking with some of the people that were there with us that night, and I was like, yeah, so who's in for next year? And, you kind of think they're nobody. And then like literally everybody was like, yeah, we would love to do that again. Because, at the point that you are getting 12 people, it becomes much, much, much more palatable from a price point. But, these are, to be fair, these are Disney fans. They're diehard. And I think the other piece, though, for me that I'll just share is it is really, really one of those things where you do it and then you go, I was so enamored by all of the details and things that you want to go back and do it again. This time to actually go, okay, now I kind of know what's coming. Now let me enjoy.
Very cool. So, as I said, this was kind of Walt's dream, and it was, part of the early planning and construction for New Orleans Square, which, of course, is where it's located, as I said, right above Pirates of the Caribbean. But sadly, Walt never got to see it completed because it didn't open really until after he passed away. But let's just talk about some of that early planning in construction. And I guess the reasoning really behind it is Walt loved the apartment. It was convenient above the firehouse. But if you've ever been up there, it's very small. It's really a room, and they have a couple beds in it and pullouts and stuff. But he wanted a proper home, right, for him, his family, Roy's family, visitors to stay in, correct?
Yeah. I mean, if you think about it, this is substantially larger than that apartment. I mean, it's sitting just about 3,000 square feet when it's all said and done. I mean, if you think about that relative to the average size of our homes today, back in the 60s when they were conceptualizing this, that was enormous. And it was designed for him to almost in my mind, if I'm him, the apartment became his working space. That's where he always conceptualized everything, thought of things. Of course, we've heard all the stories about Jungle Cruise and things like that. I think this was like, okay, that's done. Now I want to almost go home to my other home down in the back of the parks where they could actually host people, which to your point, yeah, the apartment just really wasn't going to allow them to do that. And that's why I think it's interesting because the suite is actually got several bedrooms in it in addition to the dining room and of course a patio and main sort of hosting hall. So much larger and much more hospitality focused. You immediately feel the warmth when you walk right through the doors.
And the original concept was it was going to be called the Royal Suite. As we said, Walt never got to experience it, unfortunately, but I know you're really into the kind of the design of it. So do you want to talk a little bit about just the concept and as they were getting ready to build this thing, some of the features that you really like?
The art director and designer, Emil Curry, was the person who was sort of instrumental in this early on. We probably, most of us that know Disney and love Disney, know him for his work working with Lily in the apartment. He was the one that sort of looked at and designed a lot of the elements of the carpeting, that cranberry red, that Victorian rose that we see on some of the curtains. And it's interesting because right in the area of 1966, when Walt passed, the dining room actually was very much well along. I mean, early WED architectural permits actually pegged this, and I know it's going to sound crazy, but $54,000 to try and build this thing out to what we now know as 21 Royal, and it was a bargain.
How many dinners is that? That's like, it's like 4 dinners.
It's like a month.
Not even. It's like ridiculous.
But he actually had finished some of these rooms early on. And it's funny because I didn't do this beforehand, but since then I've gone back and looked at some of the early watercolor illustrations from Dorothea Redmond and learned more about some of these beautiful murals that you see in there and sort of the history of those and the designers who painted them painstakingly. For me, I think it's just fascinating. Also, fun little tidbit, at that time, we talk about air conditioning almost as if it's just like 95 degrees out and everybody has air conditioning. Back then they didn't. And one of the funny parts of the history of that area was in that patio area. There's a beautiful patio area that sits inside the middle of it where the suite almost sort of wraps around it. There was actually a innovative air conditioning system that Walt was working on for the purposes of having outside air conditioning. Now, obviously, it had begun construction, didn't get finished, but there again, you sort of think about, and for me, it's that idea of what was on the market was not what Walt wanted. He was always pushing the envelope to the next level. And so for me, it was just fascinating. And that's where I would say, if you do go, I think it's one of those things where it's the details. And as I said about the apartment, I'm always fascinated by what's original to the era. Inside the patio, there is a gorgeous water fountain. And in that water fountain, there's actually a structure that Lily actually had purchased for that sort of space. And that is still there to this day. And so it's one of those things where you go out there and you're like, wow, like she picked this. And so it's interesting to see sort of that concept come from those early watercolors from Dorothea in the 60s right through to then what we see today, even though to your point, it never got completed. I mean, and it's been a number of other things up to and including an art gallery.
So yeah, I've experienced this location in multiple different variations. So we'll get into that in a second, but I just want to list off like what this space includes, just to give people a concept of the size of this. It had a formal salon, a living room, 2 bedrooms, bathrooms, a small bar, a kitchenette, an informal lounge, that air-conditioned patio that you spoke of, and a large balcony. And when I say large balcony, if you're at Pirates of the Caribbean looking at it, to the right of that, kind of in like the perfect phantasmic spot, if you look up at the staircase and you see the balcony and you see the WD and the RD for Walt Disney, Roy Disney in gold on the balcony railings, that balcony is part of 21 Royal. And I mean, that's a lot of space. That is a lot of stuff I just listed off. This, you could truly live here. And, Walt wasn't going to live there full time, but I know traffic wasn't as bad in the 50s and 60s, but it's the joke, the going from Burbank to Anaheim, that gets tiresome real quickly.
I won't spoil a lot of the magic, right? Because I want you guys to experience it. But I will say, when you talk about bathrooms, it's interesting. These are not just normal bathrooms.
Well, I'm going to make you spoil the magic because I guarantee you most of the people listening will not experience this. So I am giving you full permission. Spoil as much magic as you can and will. And for those of you who don't want it spoiled, the one of you who end up going, stop listening if you don't want the magic spoiled. But I really do want to open the gate here and fill people in. So thank you for the ability to spoil some of the magic. It's interesting, one of the things, and this might be not well known, is that, there's beds inside of all the bedrooms. You can, while you're there, if you want, lay down on the bed, take a photo. Most people don't know that. I'm not. That is interesting.
I'm not saying get under the covers, Jeff. I'm just saying if you want.
That's interesting, though, because when I was up there, there were beds up there. I went as part of... So there was a period of time when they changed the names of a lot of the tours at Disneyland. They'll be very similar, but they'll make enough changes that they end up changing the name of it. And frankly, it gets people to repeat the tours because, they'll think, I didn't do that one yet, even though they've done 90% of it. But in any case, there was a period of time when Walt's apartment above the firehouse was being worked on. And that is the grand finale of one of their main tours. And since that wasn't available, they reworked a tour so that we got to go up to the Dream Suite, which is where 21 Royal is. And that's how I got up to the Dream Suite. So this was after it was the art gallery, which I had also done. But when it was the art gallery, it was that. There was no bed in there for the art gallery. It was an art gallery. But for the Dream Suite, which was created for the Year of a Million Dreams celebration that they had going on, which was, I believe, like 2016 to 2018 was the Year of a Million Dreams. You could win the chance to spend overnight there. After that, they made it part of that tour in lieu of Walt's apartment. So that's how I got to see it the way that you saw it. Now, obviously, I didn't have the dining experience, but it is a beautiful space. And I was curious, like, I knew that they kept the beds there, but I was like, you really don't need them, right? Like, there's nobody's sleeping in them unless they're doing some Make-A-Wish sort of stuff. So it's interesting that they've just kind of left that there. And it's even more interesting that you can I guess, listen, for 18 grand, you should be able to do whatever you want. Tag the walls if you want for all. No, don't tag the walls.
I mean, no, you're 100% right. And it's one of those things where they actually talk to you, your butler, who is the same person that picks you up at the hotel, brings you over, they'll go over that with you and they encourage it. They want you to explore. They want you to take photos. They want you to almost like lay down in the bed and have that memory. It's interesting also because one of the bathrooms off of one of the main bedrooms is this huge tub. And again, we have to remember, we talk about it today as like, oh yeah, well, we've seen those, many houses have the tubs. Back then, that would not have been normal or sort of main class availability. I mean, that would have been very expensive. But imagine if you would, almost like the Cinderella archway, with the tub that's completely housed inside of that, a beautiful mural behind it, and then on the ceiling, the ability to have twinkling stars as you sort of would be, relaxing in your tub. And true to the beds, you can actually, they just ask that you take off your shoes. You can actually get inside the shower and take photos. And so oftentimes the group will do that in addition to individuals or couples that are there to sort of memorialize, if you will, this massive experience that they have. So it's very, all the details are there, right down to, these beautiful 19th century makeup mirrors that are on the table where, quite frankly, Lily might sit to, either put on makeup or do her hair. I mean, it's all there. And to really get up on top of all of these things in great detail and look at them, yeah, it's an experience.
Okay, the question begs to be asked. First of all, there's so many things. I'll start with, you said to get in the shower and on the bed, you must take off your shoes. Can you take off more to get in the shower? Can you use the shower?
No, but it is they'll tell you it is a working facility, right? So the toilets throughout the facility, yes, you can use all of them. The shower is technically functioning. So they tell you, whilst you can take off your shoes and take a picture, please do not turn on the faucet.
Okay, what if I mistakenly spill some food on myself and it gets real messy during dinner? I might need a shower.
I think that they would magically escort you back to your car, but I do not think that you would be able to enjoy said beautiful, beautiful shower.
Very sad. I will remind listeners, my favorite thing about Walt's apartment above the firehouse is that the man had multiple shower heads in his shower. And that's another thing. You were just talking about how we take a lot of this stuff for granted today, but back then, this is not normal stuff. And as you said, even with the 21, I keep wanting to call it the Dream Suite, with 21 Royal, a lot of this stuff is normal nowadays, wasn't back then, but it wasn't built back then. These designs and concepts were never really finished because of Walt's passing. And so it's interesting. They're being built at a time where maybe it's not as abnormal to have such a luxurious tub in a home or something. But, back then, very, very strange. So it's really interesting. I am curious, when I went up there for the tour, we were allowed to take a photo in a very specific spot by the fireplace. And they're like, this is your photo spot. Now, obviously, it sounds like you can take photos anywhere. You're saying get on the bed, take a photo. Are you able to share them after? Or is it like, hey, you can't post these?
No, absolutely. You can take photos anywhere in the apartment. You can share those with friends, family. You can post them to social. So there's no restrictions there. The fireplace is still there. And little magic is that, and again, these are the details that I appreciated was, there's sort of I'll call it an LED, but there's a digital sort of fire flame that's sort of burning in the apartment in that sort of fireplace. And one of the things that if you watch it for just a little bit, you will actually see little hidden Mickeys bursting as part of the embers in that space, which for those of us that love those little details, that was really a fun one. In much the same way that, you might see randomly in one of the bedroom walls, you'll see a little button that says, it's literally almost like a light switch, but it's a button and it says kiss goodnight. And it's like there's these beautiful, like almost like brass plaques, if you would, from that time. And if you hit it, you might see Tinkerbell flying across sort of the wall behind the bed over to the the nightstand, or in the other bedroom, there's almost like this wraparound area above, and there's actually a working train set. And so if you hit it, all of a sudden the train goes completely around the room. And maybe just because, we talk about photos, video is also perfectly okay. So some of us, like I was standing there with one of my friends and we did it once and we just watched it. And then we were like, our butler had come in and was like, you can take video too, right? And then of course, what did we do? We went over like little 2-year-olds and hit the button again. And then we started videoing it. So
it's so funny as you're talking about this. I remember that train vividly. That was cool because they showed us all those fun little tricks in there as part of the tour. Speaking of tour, you mentioned a butler. I'm kind of curious, do you get any sort of official tour when you first enter? Do they give you history, or is it really up to the guest to ask questions?
No, that's a great question. So our butler was absolutely amazing. He welcomed us in. So when you sort of go up those stairs from New Orleans Plaza, you walk up the stairs and into the apartment. That main sort of sitting room is what I will call it. Everybody sort of sits down. You are given everybody gets a welcome drink. And then he will go through a little bit of history about the apartment. Some of the design elements that you will see. So in that main that main sitting area off the left-hand side, there are several murals of castles from around the world, not Disney castles per se, but just castles that were created by Leslie Turnbull. And it is much believed that those types of castles were the inspiration for the castles of the parks that we now know and love. And so he will talk about the creation of those, the creation of each of some of the nuances that we've talked about, along with, some of the clocks that throughout the suite will do different things. And then you are essentially given probably a good hour to just explore this massive space before, sort of casually going out into the patio area, which you can always access. And in that first hour, there's, a bartender that's creating some special drinks just for your party. But you can also order anything pretty much that you want, and they will make it for you right there on the spot too. I mean, don't hold me to this, but I think between the butler, the bartending staff, and the dining room staff, there's approximately 12 to 13 people who are solely there in the suite working for you.
So basically each guest has their own person.
Yeah. I mean, if you think about it in theory, I mean, like, when you see Chef Gloria come out, who's obviously well known. She also oversees the food coming out of Club 33. And you see her standing like when you finally go and sit down at the dining room table and she and her chef and sous chefs are coming in and talking to you about the food that you're about to eat. Yeah, it's that level of bespoke service that you get to enjoy. And I actually tried some new drinks that I had not previously tried. One thing that I did want to touch upon just briefly, just because you did mention it. So you had said early on, like, hey, I don't drink alcohol. That's perfectly great. That's perfectly fine for people if they want to still go. What I love about that is we did have some folks in our party, same thing, and they created non-alcoholic iterations of the same sort of beverages that everybody else was having. So one of the things that I really appreciated about the experience was the tailoredness. So like before you even go, there's a seating chart that you have to fill out. But within that, then you have the opportunity to kind of provide some details about each person, food preferences, likes, dislikes, because keep in mind, this experience, this dinner in particular, it is a custom meal. I mean, it is not a meal that is the same meal necessarily every night. They're thinking about seasonality, they're thinking about flavors, but also they're thinking about the actual guests that are going to be a part of this. And so, there were certain things that I just knew I was not going to want in my meal. I put that in. And so then when they serve you, which by the way, you don't know what you're getting served.
So that's honestly, I'm glad you bring this up because this was a big question for me. I am a bit of a picky eater, and I know that there are dining experiences out there where it's like, listen, you're going to pay a lot of money and you're going to trust us because we're the professionals and we know it tastes good. So we're going to put food in front of you and you're going to try it. If you don't like seafood, guess what? You're going to try it. So that is not this then. You're telling me you're not choosing from a menu, but you are making clear in advance your likes and dislikes, and they will create a menu for you or for the group. Is everybody getting a different plate put in front of them?
So by and large, I would say it's a little bit of both, right? So in other words, like if there's a particular item that you just don't want or you've noted it, like I'll go broad and say maybe you don't like duck. If you put that on there and they were thinking about that for everybody else, you would get a different meal for that course. And they'll explain, I love it, because they talk to you about the sourcing and how they created all of these, and they'll even do it for yours. In other cases, if everybody's getting the same thing, sometimes there's 2 or 3 people that are getting slightly different things. We had some folks, I remember distinctly on one of ours, where I would say probably 8 of the 12 of us got one meal or one course. Then 2 or 3 of us got the same thing, but different from the rest of them. And then there was like usually one person, to your point, who's got either extreme dietary sort of restrictions or nuances, allergies, that was given their own item as well. So it's that level of personalization that you will experience. And then, oh, by the way, each of them comes whilst they introduce you to the food. There is a sommelier there who is now talking to you about the drinks that are going to be paired with it or the wine that's going to be paired with it as well.
Wow. Okay. So that's good to know because I will say, in a lot of those situations, like I said, they know best. They're the chefs. And it's rude not to try what they put in front of you. But at the same time, I'm like, listen, if I'm paying what I'm paying, I want what I want. Like, this is not the time to introduce me to new foods because I'm not that adventurous. But that's really, really, really good information to have. But I'm dying to know, you're getting such personalized attention. And it is very common when you go out to eat, not common, in the States, it's basically a requirement that you tip your server approximately 20%. Are you tipping 20% of $18,000 at the end of your meal?
I'm sure there are some that would. I sort of assimilate it to much like VIP tours. I think there's always going to be that sort of range of people where some people are going to go. I mean, if you think about VIP tours, at least like for me, I know Walt Disney World a little bit better than Disneyland in that aspect. The hourly rate can range from $450 all the way up to $900 an hour. And on a 7-hour minimum, that's like $6,500. If you're doing 20% of that, it's basically like an extra hour. So that means for a day, that could be like $900. I think when you think about the suite, it's much more, it's presented much more as sort of, this is the number all in. Everything beyond that becomes discretionary to what you provide to the individual staff. I will also say, and maybe this is just my personal experience, but like for me, I hand wrote individual custom cards that I had created just for that night. I asked in advance how many staff were there and got that sort of list so that I could write personal notes to each of them to have. And when I presented that to them, it's one of those weird things. And I don't know if you've experienced this, Jeff, but sometimes the smallest acts of kindness go the farthest. And I remember distinctly when I had given the card, I had saw the chef, and I had said, "Chef, I just want to give you this one small token of my appreciation." And she gave me a big hug. She thanked us for our night, and those are the things that I try and do to make a difference. But yeah, I mean, look, is there somebody out there dropping 20%? I'm sure, but I think most people probably are a little bit more reserved in that area.
But is a tip expected of some sort? Like, I'm just trying to get, it's just, people hear that price tag, they're like, holy crap. And like this, there are people who will hear this that are like, okay, I want to do this. I really need to, like a Disney vacation in general. I just need to budget this.
Yeah.
What can I do? And when you plan a park, you can't just say, I'll buy admission into the park. You have to think, I have to buy meals. These days it's like, well, if I want to ride everything, I need to buy lightning lane sort of stuff. So should people expect to have to tip something, or do they kind of say this is all in, like truly all inclusive?
They will leave it completely up to you. I would say expected is no.
Okay.
Suggested to some degree, yes. But again, expected would be no. I think as you go through the planning process, as you were talking to them and stuff, you'll start to realize, something is definitely appreciated and welcome, but no, not expected.
And so were you the one who was doing all of this pre-planning phone calls and stuff? Were you the one talking to them and filling out everything? Okay, can you talk to me a little bit about that? Like, how many phone calls did you have with them? When you say you filled out kind of a sheet on food preferences, were there boxes to check? Like, I like chicken, I like steak, or was it more like blank slate, let us know some stuff about you?
Yeah, no, it was, so I think of it a little bit like planning a wedding, like what you would get from like a hotel. Because like they'll send you, so like I called and I had a conversation with them. We discussed dates. As crazy as this is, like, we talk about early on, booking this a year in advance, and, you've talked about the price tag of it, and you'd kind of go like, okay, but does it sell out? And it absolutely does.
Which surprises me because I noticed it's only available Wednesday through Sunday, I think.
Correct.
And my assumption was that made me assume, number one, not selling out enough to be 7 days a week. And number two, I know that Club 33 members on some dates can get a large percentage off the experience. So knowing those two things, honestly, my assumption was, oh, this isn't selling out. So it's really interesting to hear from you. That's not the case at all. I'm curious why they close 2 days a week.
I think it's one of the, I don't know why I don't know that it was necessarily that they closed. I think they created it and started it with this idea of, we'll do it a couple of days a week. And I think it's not out of the realm of possibility to continue to see it expand. And I say that just because like I randomly came across one of their job postings not too long ago, but it was for staffing at 21 Royal. And I just happened to read it. I was like, wow, I wonder what this looks like from their side. And one of the things that was in that sort of was this nuance of like, it's possible that this could be like 7 days a week and flexibility. And so you have to start to think like, is it possible that they're going to expand it? And that certainly would not surprise me. I think the other thing is that because it's only 4 days a week, and it's not every night, there's limited number. I mean, if you think about it, on any given month, there's only 10 or 12 days that could be available then to you. And to your point, if there are club members that are booking for themselves as well, you have to sort of think about that. That's coming off the availability chart. There are people that put in time and they're like, hey, can I be considered for like 2 years? But the bookings just aren't open. So I had an initial conversation with them. We looked at a couple of different dates. I think they'll give you maybe 24 hours to kind of firm up, but they'll say like, look, it's possible that if somebody else wants that date and calls in within that time, it's not yours until it's yours.
Meaning what? You put a down payment or you paid 18 grand?
You have to pay it up front.
Holy crap. Wow.
Yeah. So
I hope the food's good, but
and it's upfront. And oh, by the way, there are places around Disney where they'll allow you to split, and put it across multiple either credit cards or things like that with different guests. VIP Tours works that way. 21 Royal does not. It is one credit card or one form of payment, one person. And that is usually the person with which then, by the way, is signing usually the contract. So there is a contract. Once you pick your date, you will get a contract that'll go over all the details, confirm the date, the time and everything, go over some of the nuances that we've talked about with regard to what you get. You'll sign that and return that, and then you're paying for it all up front. Now, once you do that, you're going to have some questions. You'll talk to the staff there either on email or on the phone. They are absolutely wonderful. And then as you get closer, they're going to send you basically what is a login to a portal that'll have a layout of the dining room. You will then go through, and down below there's a section where you'll assign everybody a seat number, just like you would at a wedding. Who's going to sit in seat 1, who's going to sit in seat 2. And with that, they'll ask you things like, do you need VIP parking? Or valet parking, excuse me. Yes or no. There's a drop down. Do you need park tickets for that day? If you're an annual pass holder, you probably don't need them, but most people...
Well, you probably do because of reservation system. Year in advance.
So if you want to get around that, yes, then... Yeah. And then you can also tell them which park you want to start at, and they'll make that reservation for you. And then there'll be a line off to the right that says, food preferences. And this is sort of an open field form where you can then provide them all the details that you may want. It can be something as simple as just, no fish or no seafood. It can be everything all the way down to a very, very detailed list of the things that you either don't like, or quite frankly, the things that you do like. Once you finish that, which is usually about a month out, you'll save that, and then that'll go through to the staff. And then at that point, then you're usually just checking in a couple of days before to make sure there's no changes or anything that they need to account for. And then you'll actually meet over at the hotel, at the beautiful fireplace, and then they will actually pick up all your party there. You get whisked into this nondescript black van. And the only thing they'll tell you is like, look, I mean, they're riding off stage. So there are going to be parts of that, they ask you to just keep your cell phone, no photos off stage. But then once you get back onto into the suite or anywhere in the parks, you're free to do so. So it's a lot on the upfront just to kind of make sure that you're getting what you want out of this night. I mean, to your point, you're putting out the money for it. You want to make sure everything is perfect.
That's awesome. I want to go back a little because you say things and these questions pop in my head. But you mentioned when you first get there, they kind of sit you down. The butler gives you a bit of history, a little bit of a tour, gives you information, stuff like that. And, photos and videos are allowed. I would hope that if I were to go, my goal would be keep the phone away until like the last hour and just like enjoy this experience, because I'm sure there are people who have their phone out the whole time and are recording it. And I get it. Like, you want these memories, but man, it feels like you got to live in the moment sort of thing. So I would really hope and encourage, and I know I would fail, but I would encourage people I was with to be like, guys, let's just put the phone away until our final hour or something, because this is incredible and we paid a lot for it. So let's just remember it,
It's a great plan. You will fail. I mean, I'm just going to put that out there. And it's because I actually thought the same thing, right? Like you look at it, sometimes you see photos online about it and you're like, yes, I'm just going to go and enjoy it. And yeah, you walk through the doors and you're immediately like, I have to capture all of this. I mean, like that main formal sitting room, mid 19th century, like empire theme, if you will. And you start to see those murals painted and you're like, this is beautiful. You start to see this,
but it'll be there 4 hours later.
But you don't necessarily. So that's why I said you don't necessarily always know what else is coming, what else is going to be the experience, because it's your first time. And so it's tough because then you're like, okay, but I don't want to I don't want to miss this if for some reason then the night gets away from us. And I will tell you, the night will get away from you. It absolutely will. I did not take nearly as many photos as I thought I was going to, but I took a ton of photos, and probably maybe one of my favorites was in that main sitting room. There's this beautiful grandfather clock that is just absolutely gorgeous. And at certain times throughout the hours, it'll actually change. And you'll see either Cinderella and her prince appearing in that clock. And so then to your point, it's like, well, I got to capture that like right now, because if I leave or I go into, dinner, once you're in dinner, you have the balcony now. And so in between meals and courses, I mean, it's like 6-7 courses. I mean, it's a lot. So in between those courses, you're like, okay, I'm going to go out on the balcony. I want to look down upon New Orleans Square, and I want to, see the people and wave to them, and and just experience this. The next thing you know, your food's back again, and you're like, okay, I'm going to go eat, and then boom, just like that, it's like, oh, Phantasmic's happening.
I've figured out an additional revenue stream. Add on Disney PhotoPass photographers. And be like, leave your phones behind, turn them off, put them in a bowl by the door, and get your own Disney PhotoPass photographer inside Royal 21 or 21 Royal. There we go. That's the add-on. But on that note, I'm joking, obviously, but is there any sort of souvenir takeaway that they give you when you leave?
Yeah.
Or are you stealing napkins? Is that...
No, it's actually really nice. At the end of the night, you get a take-home sort of bag. It's 21 Royal burgundy sort of red bag. In it, they have some after meal items. So you might have a couple of different types of teas to try back at your hotel or back at home. There might be some desserts or items like that in there. And then also they will give you a 21 Royal lapel pin. That comes in a nice little case. And then you'll actually also get an envelope. Inside that envelope will be the menu from the night, like all the different items that you were served that night from your seating card. Your seating card will then also go in there. And then they will actually seal that with a wax seal that's been stamped. So that you actually have that. In fact, one of the things I was telling my wife afterwards was, I'm actually thinking about taking like one of the really nice photos that we took as a group, and then taking some of like the items that we did get to keep, like the menus and stuff, and try and frame it or do something nice to sort of remember this experience. And I haven't done that yet. But one of the things that people will oftentimes also ask, just because, it's at the parks, is they'll be like, is there merchandise? There is not merchandise to buy. There are, however...
napkins to steal.
No. They do have an etched glass decanter for any of the wine folks out there. It has a beautiful 21 Royal logo on it that they will show you towards the end of the night. So if you liked wine and you wanted to capture and remember the night that way, that's certainly the way to do it. But other than that, there's not...
Wait a sec. What are you saying? That they'll give that to you? I don't understand what you're saying.
No, you can buy it.
Oh, you can buy it. Oh.
That's the only item that is purchasable.
How much is it?
If I remember correctly, so don't hold me to this, but it was It might have been like $750 somewhere in there. It is not a cheap decanter. Let me put it that way.
Okay, I'm totally naive. What is a decanter? This is just like a pitcher that holds wine.
Yeah, it's
Okay.
it's exactly that. It's an all glass that you can pour your wine into to sort of aerate it prior to drinking it. So for some of those types of wines that are more rare and bottled, they'll pour it into that first, and then that sort of helps bring out the flavors and the different textures of the wines. So they will make one of those available for the room to, if they want to purchase them at the end. But other than that, nothing. There's no polo shirts, Jeff. There's no.
Listen, I'm not a merch guy, so that's fine. But I am dying to know, like truly dying to know, how do they present that? Are they like, and now, if you'd like to spend more money, you can buy this $750 lemonade pitcher with 21 Royal etched into the glass? And are you saying there's only one available to buy per group, or could all 12 of you purchase one?
In theory, all 12 could purchase
Okay.
their own.
So it's not like we're giving you the one that's been used this evening. There's a brand new one in a box that.
I mean, if you're going to spend that much money, they'll give you a brand new one out of the box.
Well, I'm not saying used in a bad way. I mean, like, for the memory, this is the one that, we'll clean it for you, but we want to give you the one that we've used tonight for the memory's sake. But like, really, how do they present that? If nobody is, you're not thinking that in that moment, like, gosh, I'd love to buy that thing. How do they present that in a tasteful way?
Yeah, so your sommelier will come over and in between each course, just like she is introducing the types of wines, why she chose to pair that wine with that particular meal that you're about to enjoy. At the end, they will actually put all of the bottles of wine up on the mantle that you can take photos. So she'll bring those all out. It's usually then that they'll say like, hey, if there's anybody, and she'll have one that she can walk around and show you. It's done very tastefully. There's no pressure points or anything. It's more of a, hey, we want to let you know, like, we know people want to sort of remember this experience. There is not the normal merch that you would normally see. This is really it. And so it's done that way. Yeah.
That's pretty cool. I got to tell you, like, honestly, I am an experience guy, right? I'm not a merch guy. I'm all about experiences. That's where my money goes. And I watched the video on the official website, and like that got me a little hyped before we started talking. And now I'm listening to this and I'm like, all of a sudden that 1,500, which is insane, which like would be so irresponsible of me to spend on this. All of a sudden I'm just like, well, should I? Like, this sounds like a really cool experience. I'm not gonna lie. I hope I do it sometime, and I'm not even much of a foodie, and we really haven't even touched on the food. But I love like a dining experience. For me, it wouldn't be about the food; it would be about the experience. And it's really cool. I will say there, at the time that I'm recording this, D23 is having a sweepstakes sort of thing. And one of the prize options is 21 Royal. Now more than ever, I'm hoping to win that. And if any listeners do win that, +1, please. Please.
I won't lie. I've been entering it every day.
Oh, me as well.
I mean, yeah, no, I hear it. Look, I hear you, and I love experiences. This is definitely an experience. It is one that I'm not trying to justify the cost, right? Because for some people, it is just completely out of their price point. I completely respect that. The way that I sort of think about it was, to your point, if you've got 12 people, roughly $1,500. If you think about what it would cost you to go out to a really, really nice restaurant, have a nice bottle of wine, a couple of drinks, food, dessert, and entertainment, or maybe even if you go to like, I don't know, a Broadway show in New York, for instance, right? If you're up in New York and you go there, or you go out to some sort of concert or something afterwards. At the end of that night, your meal, your drinks, your event, your concert, probably getting close to that number. And I think for me at least, that was the way I thought about it. Like, this is a night experience. It is not just dinner. It's an experience that, we will see if we have enjoyed it, or if you leave there starving and you need to go to McDonald's and grab some chicken nuggets. I don't know. Or maybe you just want to go out and grab like Starbucks off the main street, or an ice cream. I mean, we left there absolutely full. But yeah, I mean, it's one of those experiences, and it's one where, for me, I love the rides. I love the parks. I am also very fascinated by the history of Disney, and what started with a random apartment tour and then 21 Royal and learning about Walt. Now it's like I am fascinated by some of these gorgeous, like late 1890s Victorian lamps that were spanned across the space that Walt and Lily had and adorned. I mean, some of the etched glassings. I mean, if you think about it, there's not that many photos of those lamps that were in the window, the iconic Disneyland apartment above the firehouse. They're always far away in the distance and you can't see them. And so when you start to research them and learn about them, some of the designs are just absolutely exquisite. And that experience is definitely captured in 21 Royal, and all those little details, the carpeting, the area rugs, and there's also the hidden Mickeys and stuff in there too. I mean, those don't go away, but I think we started this conversation kind of talking about like, what is this space like? And you really do, when you sit down at dinner, there's a moment where you will pause and go, I can literally imagine Walt and Lily kind of walking in and sitting down and going like, are we ready for dinner? Are we ready to eat? It's that level of magic. So I will say, for anybody listening, I would encourage you, yes, go enter for 21 Royal on the D23. And then if somebody wins it, take Jeff. And I will put this out there. If I win, I will confirm on this podcast with you, I will invite you as a +1.
I appreciate it. I will return the favor. There you go. I hope one of us wins so badly. Oh my gosh.
If we get enough people to enter and everybody agrees to take us both as +1s and we do the same, like, we could potentially stand a fighting chance.
Let's do this. I love it. I don't know when this episode is dropping. The contest may be over, but for me and you, I know that we're in it together. So I love that. I know, but I am curious. No, we're talking about, the most people, this is a very expensive evening, tons of people, it's like, no, never going to happen. But then there's the extreme of just extremely wealthy people where this is a typical Friday, Saturday night and no problem whatsoever. And I'm curious if you happen to know the answer to this. In a situation like that, where it's not as abnormal, are children allowed? If a rich daddy or mommy wants to take their 5-year-old, can you?
Yeah, absolutely. You can.
Wow.
There were some members of our party that do have children. To be fair, they opted not to, because even as a child, they would count towards your 12. So
yeah.
Now, I mean, to be fair, you're giving your child, that same $1,500 experience meal. So yes, it's possible, but I think most of the time you'll find that it's probably going to be adults or at least teenage level age. But yeah, I mean, and to your point, there are celebrities that will, if you look back on the internet and stuff, there are celebrities that have dined there as well. So if that's a thing and you want to dine at the same place as one of the celebrities, you could do that.
It's amazing. Is there a dress code? We all know Club 33 has a dress code. But, it's funny because me, looking at this, I'm like, well, there shouldn't have to be a dress code. It should be, if you're spending $1,500 on yourself for a meal, you should want to go presentable. So, but at the same time, I'm like, well, you paid it. You should be able to dress however the heck you want. So is there a dress code?
There is a light version of a dress code, which is sort of like, you can, if you want, wear a nice pair of jeans and a button-down shirt. For the ladies, if you have a dress or something that you want to wear, though, you can dress it up. I've seen a variety that span that. Sometimes people will even do themed dressing. And it's funny because, you mentioned earlier on about sort of the revenue stream for having a PhotoPass photographer there. And it's interesting that you say that, because that is one thing that I do wish was a little bit more codified, because like for us, when we went, I sort of call it like business casual. So open collar, nice suit blazer or something like sport coat like that. But it's interesting because for our group, the ladies in our group had gotten dressed up, beautiful dresses. And one of our party members had said, gosh, it's not every day that we do 21 Royal, but it's not also every day that you show up to the parks dressed to the nines. And the idea was, could we all get together on Main Street, USA, and have a photo taken? But because that driver, the butler, is picking you up at the hotel and bringing you directly to 21, you'd kind of have to do it either at 21 on the staircase or after 21 and the dining experience. And then at that point, it's dark. So I think there's something there, because I think that would have been a beautiful photo that people would want to capture and remember. For us, they do usually take a photo on the staircase right outside of 21 Royal, or the steps up to it. But just be aware that they're going to do that probably with one of your cell phones. It is not a PhotoPass person.
Okay, interesting. I'd be curious to know, obviously this is very tailored to what you want your experience to be. I wonder if a group of people are like, hey, you know what? We're like pirate people. We like dress up as pirates on weekends and go to events and stuff. We want to do this because it's above Pirates of the Caribbean. We're all coming dressed as pirates, and we want our food themed to pirates, and we want your staff wearing eye patches and bandanas on their heads. Like, I wonder how far they would go to. Yeah, obviously there's always a line that can be crossed, but I'm curious if somebody was like, no, we really want this to be a themed party.
I'll see if I can find it. There was a photo I did see of a group that was pirate themed. The guys did get dressed up. It was a little bit less, I'll call it eye patch costumey, but much more of like the jackets, the cummerbunds, or the cruffles in the shirts and stuff that would sort of embody that sort of experience. If you ever get them to dress up the staff like that, I definitely would love photos. That would be pretty funny. Especially just like to see like the chef coming out dressed as a pirate just while she's, in the kitchen, like slaving and working so hard over all this food and being so detailed about it. I mean, that is one job I could never do. I mean, trust me, I like food, but I do not like preparing it. And I just, the heat of the kitchen and stuff. No, absolutely not. I can't do it.
Well, it's the type of food, as they show in the video, that, they're preparing with tweezers. You know what I mean? Like it's that detailed, that small of details. And it just looks like a really wonderful experience. So I do want to touch on real quickly. We said, Walt never finished it. It initially never was the space it was intended to be. So in the 1970s, it was office space and also used as a planning center for Tokyo Disneyland and Disneyland International stuff. So, it's wild to think that, it's a big space, that this was all used kind of as office space and planning. And it didn't really open up to the public until 1987, when it became the Disney Gallery Collector's Room. And that was from 1987 to 2007. So for a good chunk of years there, anybody could walk through the space, and at the time, you never knew that you would want it so badly. but it was just part of normal Disneyland's, visiting the park.
I will also note that up until 2007, it didn't cost you $18,000 to walk through it.
Nope, just the entrance through the gate. So,
but that was a nice
if you
think about it, that's where there's so many artists. I mean, that's where even the Mark Davises, his work was featured in there. You start to kind of go like, I mean, it's also like, if you think about it, this is sort of so patterned because like Walt's office over on the Burbank lot, that was his office. It was pretty much like when he passed, because it was so unexpected, his office just kind of sat for, I think it was about a year and a half. And then it was sort of packed up, and then it just became working office staff space for a number of years until it was, really sort of decided like, gosh, we should turn this into and capture what this was like when Walt was here and bring this stuff back out of the archive. So there are certainly, when you look at the photos of the Disney Gallery, you see, like, you can see it almost like you see some of the either the crown moldings or some of the detailed artwork on the wall and the picture boxing. And so you do sort of almost see some of that in there. But yeah, I mean, that was when they decided to then flip it over to the Dream Suite. And I guess for me, what was fascinating that I liked about it was that they actually went back to those original draw plans. They went back to the original blueprints, those illustrations, the watercolors, to create this space in the way in which it was supposed to be. So it's not like it's a reimagined iterative. It's almost back down to that sort of historical, this is what it was supposed to be all along.
Yeah, so it's pretty cool. So as we said, that the gallery was there for a long time. 2006 Disneyland Dream Suite for the purpose of the Year of a Million Dreams, as I mentioned, and later on for some tours and such. But then it was decided to become 21 Royal, the dining experience. And for a long time, or I shouldn't say a long time, for several years, it was only available to Club 33 members. This started in September of 2015. And you had to be a Club 33 member to get this dining experience. It wasn't until 2017 when it became open to the general public. So it hasn't been terribly long, a bit longer than I thought, to be honest, because I remember reporting on this news, and at the time, the $15,000 price tag being like, holy crap. And now it's $18,000. So by the time I go, who knows what it'll cost. I was going to say,
if you wait another year or two, I'm sure it'll go up.
Yeah.
But I mean, think of it this way. Right? Like, I mean, what's the estimated park attendance at Disneyland every day? Like 35,000?
Sure.
So out of 35,000 people on any one given day, you become one of 12 people that get to see the space. I mean, that just sort of, in my mind, puts it all in perspective at how, this is not your everyday go to the parks experience. And but I also think, so you've talked about the fact that it was closed to the public or just for Club 33 members. I mean, that's one of the things where, for those people listening, which is probably the majority, who are not able to experience Club 33 because they're not members, this is one of those things where routinely, if I'm in the parks and I'm just, talking to people, this is one of those things where they don't realize that they can even do it. Because again, to your point, it's not over the top. There's not a big sign or anything. I mean, yes, there's the 21 Royal Crest seal at the end of the stairs, but I guarantee you've probably walked by it a number of times and not even noticed it because of its more reserved positioning in the parks.
Yeah, for sure. And I am kind of curious, do you happen to know where the kitchens are? Are the kitchens part of the suite, or are they kind of walking them in from a further distance, or do you have any idea?
There was in the original Disneyland, in the gallery format, part of that suite actually had a door that sort of led you to the kitchen, so to speak. That door actually is still there. I believe, if I'm remembering it correctly, it's hidden sort of behind like almost like a bookcase, not a bookcase, but like an armoire, because when they sort of upgraded and put the suite in there, they changed some of the configurations of that space. So that door is not used anymore. But right outside the dining room, if you were to exit the dining room and turn to your right, that actual hallway takes you directly to the kitchen. And that same kitchen serves both 21 Royal as well as the Club 33 staff.
Okay, very cool. Well, we've been talking so much about the actual space. We've been talking about the phenomenal experience. We really haven't touched too much on the actual food. And I'm just kind of curious, is it like the most mind-blowing food you've ever had, or is it just like, no, this is really good food. I can imagine getting this somewhere else?
It's very much tailored to that luxury experience that I think you would expect. So think, caviar, duck, lobster, elements of, sort of thinking about all of those types of things. I think it's the presentation of how you bring those sourcings together into a plate that not only has those components, but also tastes really good. So I think it's part of, for me at least, it's think about what you would get at a very nice luxury restaurant in general. And that's going to be very much in line with what you would get. So think, as I would say, smaller portions than, this is not like you're going to, Ruth's Chris and you're getting, a 15-ounce steak, right? I know one of the members of our party actually on a substitution item actually had a small sliders of Wagyu beef. So again, sort of thinking about those more finer ingredients that they can pull together into the plates. Wine-wise, you'll have a combination of Cabernets and Merlots from across the world. And some of them a little bit older than what you might expect. All of them, though, hand-picked with the guidance of the kitchen staff. So in other words, the sommelier is working, going, okay, I know they're bringing out this meal next, this type of wine, this flavor, this, maybe this is a drier wine because of something that's on the plate that they want to sort of create. Keep in mind, it's 7 courses, and there's a different glass of wine in between each course, or with each course, I should say. So pace yourself.
Yeah. Yeah, you don't need a drunk experience. That is not the goal of 21 Royal. But yeah, that's wild. And I'm going to assume if it's a Phantasmic night, the timing of this is set up so that you can enjoy Phantasmic from the balcony, correct?
Yeah, Phantasmic and the fireworks, or the fireworks, depending on which is going at that time of the year or that season. Absolutely. If you think about it, you can also get up in between meals and kind of just pop out to the balcony, but they will generally try and time it so that, you're usually wrapping up your last of your what I'll call course 6 before the fireworks. And then there's a small dessert as well. Now, just for the purposes of the podcast and making sure I've covered it, if you're celebrating something special that you're doing this, so a birthday, an anniversary, or something like that, part of the pre-planning phase, you can actually have a cake ordered to be part of your dessert, or to be taken completely home afterwards if you so choose. There is additional costs. Think of it like you would at any bakery where you're just going to have a custom cake made. They have a certain menu that you can choose from for flavors and frostings and things like that, and design elements. Like I said, we had a family member that was celebrating a birthday. She's a huge Haunted Mansion fan, and so they did a nice Haunted Mansion cake complete with the ghosts up on top. And brought that out as part of dessert for everybody as well. And then you get to enjoy the fireworks from really an unobstructed view. It is probably the best view in the park because you're above the crowd. You're just looking straight out onto the bay. Yeah, it's quite the experience there.
Very, very cool. And I'm going to assume they pick the start time, right? You don't pick that. And I'm curious, is there a very hard out time, or is it like till park closes?
Yeah, so it is a start time that's pretty close. I mean, we did I think that's like 5 o'clock ish
that they selected. They tell you the start time.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, because if you think about it, because there's 7 courses and everything that you're trying to do in that time frame, including I'll call it cocktail hour, which is that first like hour and a half where you can enjoy the patio and the suite. They have to time it so that the food can come out and be prepared on schedule. I don't want to say there's necessarily a hard out. Let me preface that though by saying, park close would be that time.
But that can change drastically throughout it's just interesting because, sometimes the year park closes at 9 or 10, other times of the year midnight. So it'd be interesting if you could just linger till midnight.
I would say 10, maybe 10:30 is probably the 95% of the time. We never felt rushed. We never felt anything like people were asking us to leave. But I say that to say, and I'm going to channel a Taylor Swift reference here, to be careful with that because, this is why we can't have nice things. For me, it was very much about enjoying the experience, but respecting the staff, respecting the space. So that's just something I sort of want to caveat that. But like, for instance, there was a drink that we tried during cocktail hour. And when we were in the dining room eating, I really enjoyed it. And so I had said to the staff, I was like, is there any way I could just get that instead of, the wine selection? And they're like, you can have both. And so the sommelier poured the wine, but then all of a sudden, the drink from the bar came through as well. So it's that accommodations that, it's really hard to come back home to your own home and then go, where's my 7-course dinner? Because it doesn't cook itself, Jeff.
Funny. Well, folks, as a reminder, it is $18,000 for a 4 to 5 hour experience accommodating up to 12 guests. It is available Wednesday through Saturday evenings. So as you said, 4 nights of the week it's available. If you want to look into more details or make a reservation, it's 21royaldisneyland.com. That's 21 the number, royaldisneyland.com. Jason, before we go here, anything else you want to add to the conversation?
Yeah, I would just say, look, you live once and
YOLO.
You really nailed it when you said you're an experiences person. This was an experience. It was one that we thoroughly enjoyed. I think the best way to think about it is like, would I recommend it? Would I say that it made a difference? Yes. Yeah, absolutely. And I think the way I would position it is, if you are just a regular goer to the parks, luxury experience isn't really your thing, this is probably not going to be something that you will enjoy the nuances and the history and the details of. But I think as you go through the parks, as you start to deepen that knowledge and the history, that is where this becomes one of those just absolute once in a lifetime must-dos. And if you do get the chance, I think you will absolutely love it. So I did. I hope that one of us wins the prize and takes the other one as +1. But no, other than that, I would say, look, thanks for having me on. I mean, I love talking about these things. I think they're fun, and doing it with fun people like you is just makes it even better.
Well, thank you for sharing your insight to all the listeners. And it sounds like, as somebody who's been, podcasting about Disney history for 10 years now, I should probably consider it. And it also sounds like maybe if somebody listening, basically you should really be into Disney history and or a mega foodie. That's who this is for. It's certainly not for everyone. And even if it's for you, quote unquote, for you, it doesn't mean it's ever going to be in your price range, sort of thing. But,
I think we've convinced you. I think that's the highlight of this. We've kind of convinced you.
You've convinced me that I want to, but that is a hefty price tag for me. I don't know. We'll see. Hopefully.
I think it's a business expense. Write it off on the podcast.
There we go. Excellent. Well, Jason, thank you so much for coming on the show. This has been a fun conversation.
Thank you. Have a good one.
Thanks for tuning into this episode. Don't miss any future episodes by subscribing and following Disney with a Z, coast to coast on your favorite podcast app, where episodes are available 24/7. And don't forget that on Friday, September 20th, you can join me in Salem, Massachusetts for the I Put a Spell on You Masquerade, a 2024 version of the famous party scene in the film Hocus Pocus, in a shooting location from the film Hocus Pocus in Salem, Massachusetts. That's coming up on Friday, September 20th, and tickets can be found at tinyurl.com/SalemParty2024, or simply click the link in this episode's description. This episode has been executive produced by Jeffrey Riccio. Gain rewards like Jeffrey, including access to never-before-heard episodes and live-stream Ask Me Anythings, by visiting the Patreon link in this episode's description. Until next time, anything you need can be found in this episode's description. From the DCTC hotline, where you can leave a voicemail and be heard on a future episode, contact info to reach me, some free gifts from me to you, and so much more. So be sure to check out this episode's description. Other than that, folks, have a magical day. Bye!